exercise? No, there is no more taking out one. Okay. This one? This is okay?
Yeah, this is fine, I suppose. Okay.
Can you all see the slide? We like crowd today. So, if anyone wants to come closer, there's like one in the back. I'm not gonna bite. I think the dripping stopped.
The weather forecast is only till 5 till 3:30.
Okay. I'll start. So I'm going to talk about Nectar of Instruction, which is a book. Srila Prabhupada wrote this book based on Sri Upadesh Amrita, which is written by Srila Rupa Goswami. So first we'll just do some invocation prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnanatirmirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyata Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So firstly, I would like to thank Nilmani Prabhu for giving me this opportunity. This topic is kind of elevated. I have really no business talking about this stuff, but yesterday was Radhashtami, and this topic seemed appropriate. Also, I'm still going through my Bhakti Shastri, so Nectar of Instruction is the book I just currently finished. So it's sort of fresh in my mind. I figured let me talk about that. Also, just to add, a lot of the content you see is based on slides and lectures given by Gauranga Darshan Prabhu, who is my teacher for the Bhakti Shastri course. So if there's anything good in here, it's credit to him. If there's any mistakes, it's on me. Okay, so first slide, just to give a background on what Nectar of Instruction is. So just a little background, like Lord Chaitanya, who we see in the middle on our altar, with Lord Nityananda, he appeared to bestow science of Krishna to the general masses. And he appeared and he had 6 main disciples, the 6 Goswamis. They were his main followers, and of those 6 disciples, 6 Goswamis, the leader of them is Srila Rupa Goswami. So Upadeshamrita is a guide for devotees. So it gives instructions on how to conduct oneself as a devotee, what are the do's and don'ts what are the prohibitions, what are the things to watch out for, the pitfalls and so on in making progress in bhakti. So that kind of constitutes the first half of Upadeshamrita, or nectar instruction. And then this last 3-4 verses, they sort of focus on the different gradations of the holiest places to visit, or places of pilgrimage, and then also a gradation of different types of devotees. So that is the very kind of like first half and second half kind of division, and then in the middle there's some discussion about the holy name. So essentially the goal of Upadeshamrita is to make us into Goswami. Goswami means like master of our senses, or somebody that can control their senses. Once we can control our senses as devotees, then we can progress to becoming pure devotees. But the first step is to be able to control our senses. So in order to make progress in bhakti, we really need to follow the instructions in Upadeshamrita. And therefore, it's part of the curriculum for the Bhakti Shastra because it's such an important text. I'm sure all of you are advanced devotees and everything I'm going to say, you've heard it. So apologies for repeating, but if anyone's new and hasn't read that book, I recommend it. It's not a big book, maybe 100 pages. So you could probably get it in a bookshop. Okay, so jumping in to verse 8, right? So I'm going to focus on verses 8 through 11, right? There's only 11 verses in the book, so it's the last 4 verses. Now, just so I get the meter right, I have a little audio clip to help me. So apologies. Hopefully it works. Okay, maybe it doesn't work. Anyway, I'll try and go ahead and get out. Tannama rupa charita jisukirtananu smrityo kramena rasana masani niyotya tishtam rajeta anuragi janukami kalam nayad akilam iti upadesha saram. The essence of all advice is that one should utilize one's full time, 24 hours a day, in nicely chanting and remembering the Lord's divine name, transcendental form, qualities, eternal pastimes, thereby gradually engaging one's tongue and mind. In this way, one should reside in Braja and serve under Krishna under the guidance of devotees. One should follow in the footsteps of the Lord's beloved devotees who are deeply attached to his devotional service. So, as you can see, the very first sentence says this is the essence of all advice. So basically, this is more or less probably the most important verse in the book because it combines all the teachings in the book into one verse. And the term here is Upadesha Saram, that means the essence of all advice. So in the previous verse, which we haven't covered, verse 7, it talks about the jaundiced patient, right? So when somebody has jaundice, the medicine is to eat sugar candy. And when somebody has jaundice and they eat sugar, it tastes bitter because they're ill, right? They can't really, their taste buds are not working properly. So, but as they take more and more sugar candy, that taste becomes sweeter and sweeter as they get improved, their health, their condition improves. In a similar way, so this is a very nice analogy from Rupa Goswami. So in a similar way, he says, the holy name, initially when we start chanting, it's not sweet, right? We're doing it as a chore, like we're doing it out of duty. We just do it as a mechanical type thing. But we're not getting any, relishing any taste out of it. But over time, if we chant more and more and we reduce the offenses that we commit while chanting, right? There are 10 offenses. The taste of the holy name becomes sweet or sweeter. So here it's saying that we should chant, but also at the same time we should be remembering the Lord's divine name, transcendental form, qualities, and pastimes. So combined, we should engage our tongue and our mind in remembering Krishna when we're chanting, and when we're performing devotional service. In that way, because normally, like when you chant, and I'm speaking for myself. When I chant, my mind is all over the place. I'm thinking, I'm planning things, I'm thinking about everything except Krishna's names when I'm chanting. But here he's saying, try to focus not only on you moving your tongue and chanting the names, but remembering Krishna at the same time. That way, you will be focused on Krishna in the right way. The other thing mentioned here is that one should reside in Vraja. Vrindavan, when it says Vraja, it means Vrindavan. And so it says one should reside in Vraja under the guidance of an advanced devotee, right? And this is not always practical, right? We can't always just go jump in a plane and go to Vrindavan and practice there, right? We all have families, jobs, and so on. But ideally, the ideal scenario is that if you can go there and you can live in Vrindavan and practice bhakti there. This instruction is also repeated in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which is also known as Nectar of Devotion. So that's another one of Srila Prabhupada's books. And also the other point here is this verses 8 to 11. They talk about Krishna, Vrindavan. This is very focused on Gaudiya Vaishnavism. There are other types of Vaishnavas, right, that worship Vishnu, or Lord Ram, or other incarnations of Krishna. But Rupa Goswami has chosen to focus on Krishna and Vrindavan because that is the line, the Gaudiya Vaishnava line. So of bhakti is explained to say. So there's different stages from to Sampati Das. So I'll just explain what those are. So Shravana is the process of hearing. So when we hear about Krishna, we hear those names, we hear about the pastimes. That is the initial stage, right? We're just hearing, we not really understand, we may not absorb what we're hearing, but we just hear. Slowly, we understand what's being said, and we start to accept because logically it's making sense to us. So that's the next stage called Varna, acceptance of what is being heard. Third stage is Smarana, which is remembering. And this also has some sub-stages which I'll talk about in a minute. But once you start to hear and accept, then you start to recall things, you start to remember, it starts to be absorbed in your brain. And then the fourth stage is realization, or apana. At this point, you start to become quite advanced, and you start to understand your real position as a spirit soul. You're an eternal servant of Krishna, so you start to have that realization in this stage. And the last stage is called sampati, and at this point, it's explained that the soul attains its original spiritual form or identity in the spiritual world. So when you go back to Godhead, you go back to the spiritual world, Goloka Vrindavan, you may have particular relationship with Krishna in one of the rasas, just like the Rajvasis who are there, right, eternally. So you can engage with Krishna in one of those spiritual forms, one of those rasas. So that's that stage. So as I said, Smarana Dasa can be broken down into sub-stages. So I'll explain those. Smarana is the first stage, which is where you're remembering the Lord but in a distracted way, right? You're remembering, but then you're not remembering at certain other times, and then it's kind of not continuous remembrance of the Lord. The next stage is Dharana, where you're becoming less distracted, You're remembering the Lord more and more consistently and constantly. Dhyana is where it's a concentrated remembrance, right? You're really focusing on the Lord in your remembrance, and your focus is much more now. You're getting much less distracted. And Anusmriti is a continuous, concentrated remembrance of the Lord. And then lastly, Samadhi is when you're in full trance, right? Every pore of your being is just focused on the Lord. So within Bhakti, there are different stages. So initially, you're practicing what's called Vaidhi Bhakti, which is just following the regulative principles, chanting your allocated number of rounds which your guru has assigned you to do, right? You're doing it as a matter of duty. So your guru, if you're initiated, would say you must chant 16 rounds, you must follow 4 regulative principles, and attend the temple programs and so on. So you're just doing that as a matter of duty. You're not getting any kind of taste out of it, and you're not doing it out of any spontaneous trigger that's attracting you to it. You're just doing it because you know you're supposed to do it. So that's where I am, and probably most of us are at that stage. But at some point, you make enough progress, you reach this spontaneous stage called raga. And raga is broken down into 2 other sub-stages, which I'll talk about in a second. But raga is when you're in like a spontaneous stage, where you're just out of your natural urge or attraction to Krishna, you start to perform the same service, but not out of matter of duty, but out of just genuine attraction to Krishna and serving Krishna. So, there's 2 types of raga bhakti, ragatmika bhakti and raganuga bhakti. So just to understand raganuga bhakti, first we need to understand what is ragatmika bhakti. So ragatmika bhakti is basically that bhakti which is practiced by the Vrajavasis. Vrajavasis are the residents of Vrindavan, namely Mother Yashoda, the Gopas, the Gopis, all the friends and family of Lord Krishna, right? They have a relationship with Krishna where they just love him. They see him as that little mischievous cowherd boy that lives next door, and they love him just because of that, not because he's God. They don't even know or realize that he's God, right? But they know that he's Krishna, and they all love him. And they have their own particular relationships with him, right? Like Mother Yashoda has that parental relationship with Krishna. The Gopas are his friends, his buddies that they play with. The Gopis see him with like a conjugal affection. So these are the ideal, perfect devotees, these Ragatmika devotees. Right? So the Raganuga devotees are their goal is to follow in the footsteps of the Ragatmika devotees. Right? They want to reach a similar stage where they're practicing Ragatmika bhakti, but they're on that path. Right? You could say they're kind of apprentices or something like that, something similar to that, or like a professor who has students that are working under him. In that kind of same vein, you can say that the Raganuga bhaktis are following in the footsteps of the Raga devotees. So within Raga, so it gets a little technical, but Raganuga bhakti can be broken up into 2 types. The sadhana can be broken into 2 types. One is bhaya, which is, so I'll just read. Right? Externally, one performs hearing and chanting in the sadhaka rupa, the outer feature of a practitioner of bhakti. And antara, which is internally, one serves Krishna in one's own perfected spiritual form, or Siddha Rupa in Braja, following the eternal Brajvasis. So covered raga, the different types of raga bhakti. And just everyone knows this, but these are the 5 rasas in Bhakti, Raghavendra Bhakti: Santa rasa, Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, Madhurya. Santa is neutrality, Dasya is servitude, Sakya is worshipping Krishna in friendship, Vatsalya is parental, and Madhurya is conjugal. So Raganuga Bhakti or Bhakta, the process that he should follow is to, if he's, say for example, he wants to have a relationship with Krishna in the Sakyaras, friendship, right? He's decided that that's my inclination to associate with Krishna as a friend. The process that that person should follow is to emulate the Raga Bhaktis, or Ragatmika Bhaktas that have followed that path, the Gopas mainly, right? The Gopas were the friends of Krishna, so one should read about the narrations of the interactions between Krishna and the Gopas and really get fully immersed in those pastimes and immerse oneself in those pastimes. And that process slowly will help one to attain that stage. And he says Raja is the best place to serve Sri Radha Krishna, and therefore even Brahma and Uddhav pray to take birth in Raja as a blade of grass. So if you remember the story when Lord Krishna left Vrindavan, all of the Vrajvasis were so upset and were going to miss him, desperately miss him, especially the gopis, right? So Lord Krishna felt the separation and he felt that the gopis were missing him, and he sent Uddhav, his dear friend, back to Vrindavan to send a message to the gopis to kind of pacify them and to make them feel better. And then when Uddhav went and he was talking to the gopis, he realized the depth of their love for Krishna was so deep. He was just taken aback that he couldn't fathom it, because the love was at a level he couldn't really comprehend. So his plan became that he would just take birth as a blade of grass somewhere in Vrindavan or on the outskirts of Vrindavan, or maybe as a creeper, which is a type of plant. And he would just aim to have the dust of the gopis land on his head. That would be the perfection of his life. Such was his reverence and respect for the love of the gopis, for Krishna. So jumping into verse 9. Okay, let me try this. They Tajanito Varamatu Tatra Pivaso Savat Vindaranyam Udara Pani Ramana Tatra Pigo Vardana Radha Kundaniha Pigo Kulapate Premanita Blavana Kurya Asya Virajato Giritate Sevam Viveki Naka. Thank you. That helped me. So I'll read the translation. The holy place known as Mathura is spiritually superior to Vaikuntha, the transcendental world, because the Lord appeared there. Superior to Mathura Puri is the transcendental forest of Vrindavan because of Krishna's Rasa Leela pastimes. And superior to the forest of Vrindavan is Govardhan Hill, for it was raised by the divine hand of Sri Krishna and was the site of his various loving pastimes. And above all, the super excellent Sri Radha Kund stands supreme, for it is overflooded with the ambrosial nectarian prema of the Lord of Gokula, Sri Krishna. Where then is that intelligent person who is unwilling to serve this divine Radha Kund, which is situated at the foot of Govardhan Hill? So, we can see here, just to summarize what's being said in this verse, is this is a gradation of the holy places. So, Vaikuntha is number 5, right? So I'm going down, but number 1 is the highest. So 5, Vaikuntha is much better than the material world. Obviously, it's a spiritual world. Vaikuntha, by definition, means that place which does not have anxiety, right? Everyone in the material world encounters anxiety all the time. Vaikuntha is that place where there is no anxiety. Can you imagine not having any anxiety? So Vaikuntha is that first place, but better than Vaikuntha is Mathura, because Lord Krishna appeared there. And then above Mathura is Vrindavana. And Vrindavan is special because many of Krishna's pastimes took place there, especially the Rasa Lila, which is mentioned in this verse. Next, Govardhan Hill is very special because Krishna, for one, lifted it with his pinky finger, and then he conducted many pastimes in Govardhan. Many of the pastimes that took place with Srimati Radharani happened at Govardhan as well. And then the topmost place in the entire universe is Radhakund. And Radhakund I'll explain a little bit more later, but it's flooded, it says, flooded with Krishna prema, love for Krishna, pure love of Krishna. So Krishna reciprocates with his devotees in Vrindavan in the five rasas. Right? But in Vaikuntha is a spiritual world. Krishna is on his own planet, like Goloka Vrindavan. But in Vaikuntha there is Vishnu, and Vishnu, you cannot have a relationship with Vishnu in rasa of Sakya or Madhurya or Vatsalya, right? You can only have that reverential relationship, right? That awe and reverence. So that's why Vaikuntha is somewhat limited. Similarly, Mathura, right? When Lord Krishna went to Mathura and he met his parents, Devaki, Vasudev, when they saw him, they didn't hug him like they were, their child and like embrace him and like a parent normally would, right? They bowed down, they folded their hands, and they prayed to him like that, So Krishna he doesn't enjoy that reverential mood, right? He prefers the loving exchanges, right, that are in the other rasas, right? The loving exchanges of like that he has with his friends, or the gopis, with his mother and father. So that's why even Mathura is somewhat limited, and it's not equal to Vrindavan. So moving on. Okay, now I need to see this verse. Antaya Madhya Bala Harita Sadaryo Yat Rama Krishna Charana Sparasha Pramoda Manam Tanoti Sahadogar Nayostayo Yat Paniya Suryavasya Kandara Kandamulai. Of all the devotees, this Govardhan hill is the best. Oh my friends, this hill supplies Krishna and Balaram along with their calves, cows and cowherd friends with all kinds of necessities: water for drinking, very soft grass, caves, fruits, flowers and vegetables. In this way, the hill offers respects to the Lord. Being touched by the lotus feet of Krishna and Balaram, Govardhan hill appears very jubilant. So in Srimad Bhagavatam, certain devotees are referred to as Haridas, which means the best of the servants of the Lord. So there are 3 Haridas mentioned, so in order of importance, right? So beginning with Yudhishthira Maharaj, He's considered Haridas because he renders service to Krishna in 3 different modes: Vatsalya, Sakya, and Dasyam. Then Uddhav, right? Uddhav is a very special friend of Lord Krishna. Krishna sent him to, as I said, to Vrindavan to speak with the Vrajvasis. And then third, the topmost, the best, is Govardhan. He is the best Haridas. So I described in this verse, right, as you can on the right side, Govardhan serves Krishna in several ways, serving Krishna, not just Krishna, Balaram, the cows, calves, and the cowherd is, he's providing drinking water. He provides caves for them to stay cool, so when they're playing or if it's raining, they can go in the caves. Provides fruits and vegetables for them to eat, flowers and soft grass for them to sit on and play. So in this way, Govardhan is serving these cowherd boys, Krishna and his friends, in so many different ways. And therefore, this verse is explained in Bhagavatam that Govardhan Hill is so very dear to not just Krishna but to Srimati Radharani. So the topmost place, as I said, is Radhakund. When Lord Chaitanya first came to Vrindavan, his goal was to try to find out the place of Radhakund. Right now, if you go today, it's very well identified. It's a kind of large lake now, and it's directly next to some Shamkund, which I'll explain. But at that time, it was just like you couldn't see where it was, like when Lord Chaitanya went there. But because he's the Lord, he was able to identify it. And then he asked his disciples, the Goswamis, to excavate that place and make it a proper place where devotees could go and come and worship. So I was just there like 2 weeks ago, and it's a very peaceful place, and you can sense the devotion. Like the air is like thick with it. It's just hard to explain, but Radhakund is, it says, the best place to perform bhajana, right? Perform bhakti. But it says, like, you shouldn't just drop everything and go there, right? As a neophyte or a beginner, you shouldn't just go to Radhakund and think that you're going to practice bhakti, right? You need to first follow, and in the first 4 verses of this book, it explains what urges to control, right? The tongue, the belly, the genitals, the mind, anger, and so on. And talks about what activities to avoid that spoil your bhakti, what activities to take up that will enhance your bhakti, and so on. You need to first, go through those stages before you're ready to go to Radhakund. Just quickly, I'll explain the story of Radhakund. So there was a demon named Aristasura, who was a bull demon. And Krishna killed this demon. However, after killing the demon, the gopis were upset with Krishna because they said, you killed the bull, and the bull is considered our father and the cow is our mother. So you killed this bull and now you've committed a sin. So you need to atone for that sin by taking bath in all the holy rivers of the world. And Krishna argued that, no, this is not a bull, this is a demon. It disguised as a bull. It's not a really bull, and I was just trying to save the Vrajvasis. So in this way, gopis did not really accept Krishna's explanation, and he accepted that he would try to atone. He said, I'm not going to go to all of these rivers all over the world. I don't have time to do that, but I'll bring them all here. So using his heel of his foot, he dug a ditch in the ground, and he summoned all the personified deities of all these rivers, and he asked them to pour their water into that ditch so that he could make a small kund, and that kund became known as Shamkund. Once that kund was filled, he took a bath in there and he purified himself, right? So in accordance to what the gopis were demanding. But then he told the gopis, look, because you agreed that you took the side of a demon, you also need to atone and you also need to take bath in these holy rivers. But they didn't want to take a bath in that same kund. They said, this kund is now contaminated with all your sins, Krishna. So we're not going to take a bath in that kund, we're going to make our own kund. So then Srimati Radharani engaged all the devotees, they took their bangles off and they started making a kund, like scratching the ground and digging a hole. So that's why sometimes also called as kanch kund. Kanch is like a bangle. So they built this, they made this big hole, and then in order to fill it, they went with pots, clay pots from Mansi Ganga, which is a nearby lake, to take from there and carry on their head and bring it to this kund. But somehow that plan didn't work out and they became very frustrated. At that point, Lord Krishna kind of became compassionate towards them and kind of summoned the same deities of the rivers again and asked them to help. And they requested Radharani that, can we please pour our water in your kund so we can fill it up, and then she agreed. So once that kund was filled, that became known as Radha Kund. And then the gopis and Radharani, they took bath in there, and then that's how those two kunds came into appearance. And as you see the bullet on the slide, it says Lord Krishna declared that Radha Kund is as dear to him as Srimati Radharani herself. And anyone that bathes in it will get her love. Right? So Radha Kund is the liquid personification of Srimati Radharani's love, and that love is the topmost love. So you can imagine how potent that water is. One thing to note is that one should approach Radha Kundas with a very respectful and humble mood, right? One shouldn't just jump in and frolic around. And there's a story, well-known story, that at the time Srila Prabhupada, some of the devotees, they were doing that. They jumped in and they were frolicking around in Radhakund, and he was not pleased with that. And he said that the mood should be very respectful. In fact, ideally you should just sprinkle some water on your head from the kund rather than jumping in and risking causing an offense. So here's this picture of my recent trip to Radhakund Shampoo. So on the left is Radhakund, the bank, and right is Shampoo. The interesting thing is that if you go to the Vrindavan where the ISKCON temple is, that area is like super crowded, and you can't even walk, and you come here and this is very quiet and peaceful. So it's like really ideal place to perform bhakti. So verse 10, it's about 5 minutes, so I'll try to wrap it. So verse 10, karma karmit parito hare priyat, better. Udyo jana vimukta bhakti parama preme kanishtastatha Tevyastha Pashupala Pankajatisha Stabhyo Pisaradika Prestata Gadiyamata Viyasaresita Nasrayaka Kriti. Translation. In the Shastra it is said that all types of fruitive workers, he who is advanced in knowledge of the higher values of life, is favored by the Supreme Lord Hari. Out of many such people who are advanced in knowledge, jnanis, one who is practically liberated by virtue of his knowledge may take to devotional service. He is superior to others. However, one who has actually attained prema, pure love of Krishna, is superior to him. The gopis are exalted above all the advanced devotees because they are always totally dependent upon Krishna, the transcendental cowherd boy. Among the gopis, Srimati Radharani is the most dear to Krishna. Her kund is as profoundly dear to Lord Krishna as this most beloved of the gopis. who then will not reside at Radhakund, and in a spiritual body surcharged with ecstatic devotional feelings, render loving service to the divine couple Shri Shri Radha Govinda, who perform their Astakalya Leela, their eternal eightfold daily pastimes. Indeed, those who execute devotional service on the banks of Radhakund are the most fortunate people in the universe. So the previous verse gave a gradation of holy places. Now this verse gives a gradation of different types of devotees. Right? So starts with talking about the Gyanis. Right? They are better than the Karmis. Karmis are those like regular people who are just after working hard to earn money to satisfy their senses and to achieve fruitive results in life, right? 99% of the people in this world. They have no idea of the real purpose of human life. They have no idea of what, the goal of human life is that we are to realize that we are eternal servants of Krishna. They have no perception of that, right? They're all happy going to work, living their life, and so on. Jnanis, at least, they have that inclination towards self-realization, spiritual life. They understand that material life is somewhat of a dead end, right? Anything you earn or gain in this material world, you can't take with you. It's not permanent, it's temporary. So the Jnanis, at least, they have that inclination to become self-realized. Of the Jnanis, the best Jnanis are those called the Jnana Vimuktas. These are advanced Jnanis, and they are considered practically liberated, right? They attain that level of knowledge which is guaranteed that they are practically liberated. But better than the Jnanis, or better than the Jnana Vimuktas, are the devotees. So the devotees are better because their goal is love of God, right? And to serve Krishna and to develop love of God and to share that love of God with others. And then amongst the devotees, right, there are different levels of prema, right? There's different stages of progress in bhakti, and the topmost level is called prema, right? Pure love of God. So of the devotees, the best are those who have achieved prema. And then above them, of those devotees who have achieved prema, the best of them are the gopis. Why is that? The gopis are in the mood of madhurya, and it said madhurya ras is all-encompassing of the other rasas. That's why it's the superior or the topmost rasa. So the gopis are the topmost, and of the gopis, the topmost gopi is Srimati Radharani. And then Radhakund, the Radhakund is a personification of Radharani's love, and therefore Radhakund is equally dear to Krishna as Srimati Radharani is. Srinathji ki jai, Shri Gaur Nitai ki jai, Ram Sita Lakshman. Okay, so the gradation, just to repeat, the gradation on those in the spiritual path, right? Starting at the lowest is the Karmis, then the Jnanis, then the Jnana Vimuktas, then the devotees who are in the stage of prema, and of those, the gopis, and the topmost is Srimati Radharani. And it's said that the gopis practice bhakti in the mood of separation. This is called Vipralamba Seva. So, and that is what Lord Chaitanya preached, that this is the right mood to worship Krishna in. So when Lord Krishna left Vrindavan, the gopis never actually lost, you could say, contact with Krishna, because they were so intimately connected through their mind, thinking of him always. And that was what he wanted. He wanted them to think more intensely about him. And that's why he left, because one of the reasons why he left, because he wanted the intensity of their love for him to be even more stronger than it was already. So that mood of separation is very important to strive for. I'll skip this slide, but basically it's a nice verse that describes the attributes of Srimati Radharani. You can check that out. And then the last verse is verse 11. Oh, yeah. Okay, of the many objects of favor, delight, and of all the lovable damsels of Rajbhumi, Srimati Radharani is certainly the most treasured object of Krishna's love, and in every respect her divine kund is described by great sages similarly dear to him. Undoubtedly, Radha Kund is very rarely attained even by the great devotees. Therefore, it is even more difficult for ordinary devotees to attain. If one simply bathes once in these holy waters, one's pure love of Krishna is fully around. So this is just a repetition of what we covered earlier, but essentially the summary is that Radharani is the most beloved object of Krishna, and this lake is owned by Srimati Radharani. And Radha Kund is not attained even by great sages such as Narada and Sanaka Rishi. They're not even able to take the bath in this kund. So, if one can achieve and take bath there, they should consider themselves extremely fortunate. So if one is really interested in going back to Godhead, there are two things that they should do. One is stay on the banks of the Radha Kund, and second is take daily bath in there and while performing bhakti. These two things, one performs, one is guaranteed to go back to Godhead. So I'll stop there. Over. If there's any quick questions, I can take them. Otherwise, okay, no question. Thank you.
Thank you, Nandinacharya Prabhu, for giving us a nice summary of the last. Thank you, Nandinacharya, for a wonderful class on the last 4 verses, summarizing the glories of the holy name and Radhakund and so many other places. I don't know if everybody knows, but we are all actually very, very fortunate that we actually have Radha Kund Vasi staying here in the temple. So Sri Radha Mataji here, she stayed for so many years on the banks of Radha Kund and takes advantage of that. And certainly when we go to Vrindavan, there we have the opportunity to stay with her and take darshan of Radha Kund for a few days every day, chant on the banks of Radha Kund, take bath in Radha Kund there, so it's very, very nice. So it's very wonderful to remember Radha Kund and just think, that's the most spiritual potent place in the entire spiritual and material universes. So thank you, Prabhu. So I think are we having prasad outside? I think we're having prasadam outside. During the stop. Both inside and outside, hopefully. And this one. At 7 o'clock, we will have Shainati, so request devotees to come back for Shainati. Thank you all so much. Hare Krishna.
Nice class.
Nice class, very nice. Very nice. Hey, which is that Tilaka?
Vasanta Tilaka?
Vasanta Tilaka is Govinda Madhukosha. Which is that? Tung, 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 tung.
The last one. The last one.
That's
It's called some kind of.
Shardula Victory.
Correct.
Play of the Tiger.
Tiger.
Shardula means
Siv, no, Shardik means lion. Shardik.
Shardula Victory, that's the meter.
Yes, that's the meter.
The
Tilaka.
last one is Mandakini meter or something. Mandakini.
Yeah, meters is so hard for me.
There's only like 5 meters. It's not that difficult. You look at the size of the verses, and you can do it. It's not that difficult.
The last 4 verses are tricky, but they're nice. The meters are so
Shardik
nice.
That's the best one. Shardula Victory is the meter in the world.
Vikrida.